Moving now to U.S., where stock index futures were trading sharply lower ahead of Tuesday's open. Markets worldwide were trading in the red, with U.S. futures coming under additional pressure after U.S. stocks posted sharp declines on Monday. U.S. companies due to report earnings today include McDonald's, Pfizer, and Athena. In data news, the S&P Case-Shiller House Price Index is slated to come out at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by consumer confidence data and housing vacancies at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and the Dallas Fed's Texas Service Sector Outlook Survey at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. President Donald Trump is expected to deliver his State of the Union address for 2018 to a joint session of Congress. The Federal Open Market Committee is to kick off the first day of its two-day policy meeting. While the U.S. Federal Reserve isn't expected to make any changes to its policy stance, the meeting will mark the last time Janet Yellen will act as chair of the central bank before the role is passed on to Jerome Powell. In Asia, indices traded lower today, tracking declines seen on Wall Street in the previous session. Tokyo's benchmark Nikkei 225 index fell 1.43%. Over in Seoul, the Kospi declined 1.17% to close at 2,567.74 after rising nearly 1% and notching a record close in the previous session. In Australia, the S&P ASX 200 finished the session lower by 0.87%. Greater China markets also traded lower after sliding in the afternoon in the previous session. On profit-taking, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index fell 1.05%. On the mainland, the Shanghai Composite closed down 34.81 points, and the Shenzhen Composite fell 10.23%. And Toro Gold Limited became Africa's newest gold producer last week when it delivered its first batch of bullion. And the privately held firm is now weighing the possibility of selling shares this year. The company, which achieved the unusual feat of building a bullion mine without tapping public markets for funding, expects to produce about 135,000 ounces of the metal a year from the Mako project in Senegal. The mine was built ahead of schedule and came in below the $158 million budget. Toro, which has been bankrolled by private equity investors, including Resource Capital Funds and Tembo Capital, is now considering how best to deliver returns to those investors. Still in commodities now, the NOI polls Consumer Confidence Index report here for fourth quarter 2017 indicates that the index increased by 3 points to stand at 70.5 points compared to the third quarter 2017, where it stood at 65.5 points. Now, the report released shows a perceived increase in the level of confidence of consumers on the state of the economy, which is mostly communicated through saving and spending patterns. Let's talk more about this with Pamela Bassiduke, research analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Good afternoon, Pamela. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the NOI polls Consumer Confidence Index increased by 3 points. That's in fourth quarter. What does this mean?
So generally, Consumer Confidence Index measures consumers' assessment of the current economic situation and then their expectations for the future. So in other words, what this means is that we're measuring how consumers feel about their current financial situation and how optimistic they are about the future. So an increase in Consumer Confidence Index is a good thing for us. It means that there was an improvement in consumers' current financial situations and they are optimistic and hopeful about the future. So this means that consumers are confident about the future. That means that we're going to see a propensity to an increase in the propensity to spend, and we're going to see increases which will lead to an increase in the outputs, economic outputs, which will definitely lead to an increase in economic growth. So, however, if the reverse was the case, if there was a reduction, we would see that consumers would have been less confident or pessimistic about the future, and we'll likely see consumers saving more than spending, but slowing down economic growth. However, thankfully, this is not the case. And we also have inflation figures to back that up. So we've seen that the rate of increase in prices has slowed. We saw inflation as high as 18% in January, and now it's as low as 15.37% in December. So optimally, people are bound to be more optimistic.
Okay, so one of the sub-indices of the CCI Inflation Expectation Index experienced a a marginal increase. What does this mean?
Yeah, this could be in respect to the expectations for an upward review of the minimum wage. So we recall in May 2016, we saw federal government increase fuel pump price from $87 per liter, 7 naira per liter to 145 naira per liter. And then, the federal government promised that after the review in fuel prices, there's going to be an upward review in wages. Then, currently in an election season, we're currently like an election period, so the run up to elections, we're most likely to see they're most likely to see an upward review in wages. So we can even see that as we've seen recently that the federal government has set up a committee to decide the appropriate minimum wage required for Nigerians. So all things being equal, we should and with all arrangements expected, with all arrangements in place, we should see Q3 2017, we should see an upward review in wages. So what does all this mean? It just simply means that if there's an increase in wages, we'll definitely most likely see an increase in prices. And these are had inflationary pressures. But then we should also look at the relativity of this increase. It's very, very important. So let's give an example. If we see wages increase by 10% and then prices increase by, let's say, 10%, we will see that consumers are still better off all the same.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Pamela. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, world's tallest man and the shortest woman visit Egypt's pyramid. Details in a moment.